find it difficult to operate in India. So maybe let me just start off with you. Can you perhaps give us some color about working in India?
Sure. So thank you, Patrick, for the question. That's quite an interesting question and discussion to do this evening. Yes, that is true. So one of the biggest challenges of working in India is actually not just, it doesn't seem like a single country. There is just too much of diversity out here, and it almost looks like a conglomeration of a number of countries put together to work together. So that's definitely a challenge. I'll be quickly talking about certain opportunities that this challenge also brings about. Number one is that, well, Patrick, do you want me to speak about the opportunities at this stage?
Sure, please do.
Sure. So I will go ahead. Yeah. Well, as as most of us know, that the pool of talent is pretty good here. So it's no more just about computers or IT. There is a lot being done about the latest innovative technologies like big data, blockchain, AI, you name it, and there is a very good pool of talent that is available here to work upon. Another very interesting thing is that a lot of governmental and regulatory processes have gone online. So, there is always this fear of working in developing countries that you shall be caught up in corruption or red tapeism. But now that has been limited a lot thanks to the digital India initiatives of the government. Just to put it on record, we have one of the most successful vaccination drives that is happening right now, and each and every person being vaccinated has got it verified along his identity card. We call it the Aadhaar card. So having said that, that's making systems very efficient right now. Next, I will be touching upon the Make in India initiative. So a lot of you already know that India has certain kind of IT prowess. So it's not just going to be about IT now. A number of schemes and subsidies have been introduced to boom or to bring up or encourage manufacturing in India. And to back all that up, well, foreign business is not new to India. So why I'm saying that is there are a number of professional, legal, and corporate services available. So for entities who want to set up business in India, that really such kind of services and these digital initiatives help quite a lot. And having just spoken about the diversity in India, well, the first thing that may seem challenging is, how does one carry out the conversation? But given that that English is better, is almost understood across all metropolitan cities and industrial towns in India, so that isn't much of a challenge. And definitely, as I am an ESSEC alumni working in India, and a lot of us who are here, networking does help a lot, for anyone looking to work in India. So yes, that's pretty much about the opportunities and challenges here.
Okay, thank you, Durgesh. I want to maybe just switch my attention to Joanne for a second. I understand that you are in the pharmaceutical space, which India has a lot of pharmaceutical countries, in the generics and whatnot. Perhaps if you could share, some of your experience working in India with Indian, whether colleagues or clients, suppliers, your experience, that I think that would be interesting.
Yeah. So India has, and even now has, a lot of generic developers as well as biosimilar. So like the follow-on biologics that we see, for example, Humira. I think the first intention to do generic as well as biologic is, of course, to actually reduce the cost of the healthcare system. And India has a huge domestic demand and requirement for, to actually bring down the cost of drugs to be used for the population. So we understand the end goal of that development for a generic or a biosimilar. That is, they need to hit the market at a quick pace. Just launch it just after the patent expire, and go into as many markets as possible. So with negotiation with generic companies, with companies that are focused in biosimilar, a lot of the time is around speed and how cost effective can we be. Also, in terms of getting patients to be enrolled in these trials, we need to go to countries where the healthcare system is not so comprehensive. Because if the healthcare system is comprehensive, then the patient will not want to be enrolled and to actually be put on a drug that is on trial, because they can actually get the treatment reimbursed. So when we run not generics, but more of like biosimilar trials, we usually go to countries to get data, and the countries usually are poorer and the healthcare system is not so comprehensive.
Okay. So interestingly, you mentioned that speed is of the essence. When you deal with companies in India who are into generics, because earlier, this afternoon we were talking about the Indian culture, where family plays a huge, important, immense part of their lives, and relationships, especially building over a longer term, it takes time. So how do you juggle, the dynamic between having to do business, cutting a deal, in a shorter time versus the Indians' affinity to build a longer term relationship before they trust you?
So just a disclaimer that I don't cover the Indian market directly, but I have heard a lot from being in this industry and my colleagues. I think for India, in terms of cutting the deal, the sales cycle is very long. From what I see, it's much longer than the other geography areas that we usually see. And there are many, I don't know, like maybe you get the award at revision 10 or 12 of the proposal. And sometimes I do see discussion taking on for even a year. And I think for Indian customers, they really want to see the, your team members face to face, your executive leadership. So we have, many times we have teams, not just the operation team that will be conducting the study, and they may not be based in India because the trial could be a global trial. So we have people flying in, the operation team, the finance team, the legal team sometimes. So they really want to get to know you. And my understanding is there are many rounds of negotiation, and it's really price sensitive for the India market.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Joanne. I see Yan-Tarō, you're nodding your head. Is this your experience with the Japanese culture as well?
Hello everyone. First, it's a pleasure for me to be here. Yes, indeed. I mean, I think it's going to be a common feature for many examples that we see today. But indeed, in Japan, the relationship is key. Managing a long-term vision in how to do things with your partners are something that is very important to think about. So in Japan, you clearly need to have patience. So lead time is long. As per my experience, you need to sometimes make 20 or more meetings just to reassure your counterpart on a given topic and explain all the details before moving to anything that looks like concrete stage. And you need to build personal relationships. So in terms of challenge, that's something that is very important to think about, how to create the personal relationship in the meeting and outside, because they need to be able to trust you at a personal level, and also making sure to not waste, not let's say lose your patience, and make sure you align everyone at each stage actually of the decision-making process, in understanding what are the benefits, what is the strong point of what you are doing, basically.
Thank you. It's very interesting that you mentioned, personal relationship inside and outside, of the work context. We understand the Japanese are very hierarchical, So how do you perhaps enlighten us? How do you navigate a Japanese work culture, especially from an outsider perspective? You're trying to do business with them. Who do you create that relationship with? And with the staff, with the boss, and being so hierarchical that they are. Where is your touch point? Where's the entry point, and how do you navigate that?
It's a key point for Japan business. It's the case also, in other areas, but clearly in Japan it's key. The answer is you need to make several touch points. You need to have a top-down approach, because it's very powerful when you can come up from the top, meaning you can start with the executive. Usually then the rest follows more easily, but you also need to have a close relationship with the technical guys, or with let's say the person that will be actually in charge of doing the project and running the solutions. So both cases. And in order to do that, there are several strategies that can put in place, but you also have to use, if I can say use, but also leverage the different people in your organization to match, let's say, the expectations of your counterpart. So sometimes the executive part, of course, they want to hear from you if you are the director, but sometimes they want to meet your, as it was just said before, they want to meet your executive just to make sure that things are done properly and that the management is committing. The technical guys, they want to have also relationship of trust in terms of technical matters. I work in a very high technological space, a very high technology space. We need to have this mindset proximity between the technical guys and our technical guys. And of course, as let's say the person in charge of managing the relationship, you have to be trustworthy of everyone. So you have to manage all these stages and align the expectations and the relationships at all these different steps.
Okay, thank you. Let me move on to Bruno. It looks like that's the Bank of China building right behind you.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So it is interesting because here we are talking about India, Japan, where patience and lots of patience. It might be I think Yan-Tarō might have already scared some of the students here. That sometimes you need 12 to 20 meetings with the Japanese, and Joanne is saying that you've got version 10, version 12 when you deal with Indian companies. But Bruno, you're sitting in Hong Kong, where hustling speed is the name of the game. So I understand that you have regional responsibilities across Asia and maybe even Africa as well. So help us understand, within investment banking, within the speed of Hong Kong, and having to navigate Asia, where patience, relationship, trust, and whatnot are paramount. How do you do that?
Yeah, so you are right. My responsibilities go from Pakistan all the way to Papua New Guinea and everything in between. I think Hong Kong is a fast-paced environment, but I think the one thing to keep in mind is that you cannot paint Asia with a broad brush. It is very different from wherever you go. Even within the same country, it is very different. And for example, if you're dealing with Chinese companies, if they are a state-owned entity, their mentality and their way of doing things is very different than an Alibaba or an entrepreneur-led company or a private company or family office or whatever. So it is largely very diverse. If there's one thing which I think is a key fundamental that people need to have when doing business in Asia, I think it is patience. Wherever you are, whether it's Japan, you need patience to build the trust. India, you need the patience to get through the usually the regulation more than anything else. China, you need the patience to navigate the system internally. You need patience for different reasons in different places, but you do need patience at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. If I could maybe ask the panelists, the next question. Which country, do you find particularly challenging to do business with, and why? Can we go back to Durgesh again? Durgesh, I think you are muted.
Sorry. So that's an interesting question, especially with the business and energy space that I am in. We do a lot of business with China. My experience of working with China has been quite positive, actually. We do import a lot of our solar panels and material from China. The line of basically what I really the question is challenging, but I'm putting it in a different perspective. Well, our Chinese counterparts, in order to navigate the challenge of cultural difference, they have recruited and trained Indian executives within India to represent their countries. And how that helps is that the line of communication comes to us through these Indian representatives of the Chinese counterparts. So these Indian representatives, they make sure that the line of communication is pretty much clear. The general understanding, all the legal aspects are very much well conveyed. So I would say that we have had this positive experience thanks to this approach adopted by the Chinese counterparts.
Okay, that's interesting to learn. The Chinese are actually adapting their ways. When they are working with a country like India. What about Joanne? Which country will come to mind?
Well, actually, I was also about to say China, because I have been working quite a lot with China companies in the last 2 years. So I think, like what Bruno, you mentioned about state-owned companies. So if it's a state-owned company, their request for proposal, sometimes, it can be like cartons full of documents just to submit it for due diligence. And then they need like multiple copies of it. They want you to put in a brown envelope. And when you are present at a bid defense, you got to there's kind of like an opening ceremony where you kind of like open it physically. I don't know what they do with the papers. They want hard copies. So I do remember this experience with state-owned companies, and I have seen other versions of that requirement, which is it's not the same, or there's nothing like similar to other Southeast Asian countries, or for example even Taiwan or China or Hong Kong companies. I think we don't usually receive those requests. Other areas of challenges would be, at the bidding. Sorry, just now we talked about the bidding phase, but also at the contractual phase. So I worked in a US headquarter, US-based company. In my area of work, we don't always give prices as fixed price. But what we see from China-based companies, whether it's biotechs or local pharmas, many of them, they are asking for a fixed price quotation. So fixed price for the direct fees of our service, as well as they try to fix as much of the indirect fees, which is sometimes difficult for our legal to get consent to have that kind of clause being approved on the master service agreement. Sometimes they want inflation rates to be fixed. They want even sometimes taxes. They want it to kind of be in a certain so that we control it within a certain range, even though that's nothing we can actually it's out of our control when it comes to things like that. So I think for US companies, I can only speak for my company. I think we have a kind of like a gap in being able to accept some of the clauses at the master service agreement level. And sometimes that actually resulted in, negotiation failure at the final phases of a certain opportunity or project.
Okay. That's interesting. I mean, do you have a sense of why they would want things to be fixed, within a master service agreement?
I think it's more of the what I call it. They are able to kind of capture that budget, across a certain timeline, and they kind of anticipate that there will not be too much of a fluctuation. But for us, for my company, that's not something we can routinely accept. There are exceptions, but it's not something we can routinely accept. And there are also other clauses, for example, liability on third-party vendors. We have instances where client want us to bear like full liability when we contract third-party vendors, which is also not an industry norm for our industry. But I think those are the areas we kind of need to find a way to meet the requirements in the market somewhere.
Okay. Would you find that is this something cultural, or is this what drives this kind of behavior?
I would think I see this kind of contractual management more in other industry, for instance, construction, or maybe other manufacturing industry. But for a service industry like ours, it's not the norm. Yeah, but we do see other, especially other local providers, being able to cater to the needs of the customer.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me turn to Bruno. Given your span of responsibilities, which will be the most interesting? Which will be the most challenging to do business with?
To be honest, it is hard to pinpoint to one country or one jurisdiction. I think they all have different challenges. In India, it's regulation, for example. In China, it is price sensitivity. In Japan, it's long lead preparation times. So it's different challenges in different countries. But what I can say is, look, you get the first project there, you get it wrong the first time, you learn from your mistakes. You get the second project, you adapt, you tweak, and then you get the third project and you get it right. So you get to approach things with an open mind. In the end of the day, everywhere, there's challenges everywhere. And comes the end of the year, or comes, after a few years of doing what one does, you learn how things work, and then you try to allocate your time effectively, where you say, what's the maximum impact I can have within the 2 hands, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year that I can do, and you budget your time accordingly. But I can't pinpoint to one country. It's just different places have different challenges, and you have to adapt.
Would there be, perhaps in your case, would there be a country or a culture that for you personally that you really have to make a lot of adjustment, given where your culture is?
Oh, everywhere. Look, everywhere you have to make adjustments. If you're in India, you have to be as close as possible to India. If you're in China, you have to be as close as possible to the Chinese. And if you're in Japan, same thing. If you're in Singapore, same thing. You have to adapt. You have to be a chameleon if you're covering the whole continent.
Thank you. Yan? How about yourself? What country did you find most challenging?
That me or the other?
Yes.
Yan? Okay. No, so on my side, I would say each country has its own difficulty. But in terms of challenge, personally, I oversee Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. They are all challenging. Japan is very challenging because the local culture is very strong. It's less internationalized, even though it has a lot of international successes. So you have to adapt to the local context. So that would, what I think would be the major barrier to entry. But once you know that, and once you're willing to do that, then it's a very worthy investment. For example, in Japan, you have to know that when you want to sign a non-disclosure agreement, it's usually the most difficult legal process that you have to face. It's more difficult to do an NDA than compared to do a contract. So you have to go through all the steps and technical discussions, being subtle about how you manage your intellectual property. And then if you sign the NDA, your chances to sign the contract are up 70%. So you have to know these kind of things before doing things right. And the other country maybe I would mention China because of IP management. I work in the licensing IP, so I know that it can be a challenge, and of course pricing. So you have to consider probably to give your first business proposal with twice the price because they will cut in half the price before thinking about anything else. So it's funny way of working, but it's challenging.
Okay. Given your span of responsibility, for Japan, Korea, as well as Taiwan, all three of which are highly influenced, by Confucianism. So while most people kind of group Japan and Korea and just say that, oh, they are East Asia, can you perhaps share with us, in your experience, how different are they? Or how similar are they, these three economies?
Actually, I would bring closer Taiwan and Japan. For me, Taiwan looks closer to Japan than Korea. So in terms of way of approaching business and human relationship, I would think that Taiwanese are very close, have very close behavior and way of thinking with the Japanese people, but with let's say the Chinese mindset, meaning that they will maybe more easily give you their opinion. Korea, it's a little bit different. They would be stronger at what they tell you, and maybe the relationship you build is maybe not as deep as you think. So it's also a challenge to build a trustworthy and long-term relationship with Korea, maybe more than what you can do in Japan.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Perhaps, let's have some questions from the floor here. Does anyone have a question? Or where are my Korean students? There are two of you here, right? So how would you respond? Or maybe you can advise Yan-Tarō. Why are Koreans difficult to build relationship with? If you could press the mic, that would be helpful.
Well, like you mentioned, it takes quite a lot of time to build a trust between, if you want to have business relationship with Koreans. So it's a long-term thing, but you need to make sure that you get to know them on a personal level as well, not just work level. It really helps out if you know them. Maybe just know how many family members are there in their family, or maybe their birthdays. Small little things really help with them.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Perhaps let's move on to something light-hearted. In your experience working across Asia, are there funny encounters because of cultural insensitivities that you can share with us? Let's start with Bruno this time around.
Look, chicken feet. Chicken feet was a first time I was in China, but taken out for lunch. I knew this was coming in some shape or form, but having it on my plate first time was a bit of a surprise.
So did you enjoy it?
Yes, I did actually. It tastes like KFC, less meat, more bone.
Okay, Durgesh?
Sure. So something very interesting is that there are always so many geopolitical issues that are happening between the Asian countries, but their business equation, it doesn't get affected because they know that one cannot do without the other. So you will always hear someone from certain country cribbing about the other, but you better don't judge them because they will end up doing business with each other. So that's about an insensitivity turned into a business sensitivity, I would rather say.
Okay. I know from my experience that when I'm in India, I don't talk about Pakistani cricket and vice versa. Joanne?
Yeah, I think it's also food. So I think, don't assume that everybody can accept the presentation of the food. So I have teams that came from different parts of the world for a pitch for a bid defense. Then we sat down, we had a Chinese style dinner at a Taiwanese restaurant. So they have this steamed fish. So it's a whole fish steamed with the eyes staring at you. So some of my colleagues from Eastern Europe, from US, they were looking at us eating fish. Then, Chinese, for Asian, sometimes we do the fins of the fish. Then some people actually attack the head. So they couldn't accept it.
Okay.
Well, so the presentation of the food matters.
Okay. Have any of you actually been asked to eat a specialty in the Philippines, which is some kind of I think it's an unborn chicken. Perhaps our Filipino friends can share with us. What is that dish about?
It's called balot. So it's actually like egg duck.
A duck.
Yeah. Like not yet born, like egg, like from a chicken or a duck.
Okay.
Then you eat it raw.
And you eat it raw, right? Do you like it?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a huge cultural difference for me. Not sure whether I would even dare to touch it. Yan-Tarō, any interesting stories to share?
Okay, yeah. So in terms of insensitivities, the two main points that I would like to highlight and things to be careful about. First, of course, is as it was mentioned, giving your personal view on geopolitical issues. It's a very bad idea because you don't know all the subtleties, so it's usually a bad idea, especially when you come up with some all-made thinking that is not very well explained. And second, also, and I think it relates a lot to other points, but it's important to be sensitive to weak signals in meetings, especially. And I've seen so many high experienced sales guys coming out there in Japan, Korea, or Taiwan, being sure of having done the excellent pitch in English. Rolling out of the meeting saying, "Hey, it went well," but actually it went very bad, and they could not even catch that. So it's very important to put your pride aside and making sure to try and catch the weak signals in terms of what's being perceived, what's being understood by your counterpart. So that would be the things that I would highlight when bringing my European executives here.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on, a lot has been said, especially over the past decade, and we are in a COVID situation right now, and as we all know, the large part of Europe is on lockdown, and instead, China is humming along. So there's a lot of talk about, the Asia Rising or the Asian Century. From where you are sitting, can you give us a perspective, your take on, about what some would call the Asia Century? Let me start with the lady first for this question? Joanne.
Yeah, I mean, I see it. I mean, in my industry, I see that beyond, like what we said earlier, beyond generics, beyond biosimilar products, we are now seeing innovative products coming out from the Asia market, and running many like first in class, first in human study. So I think that's something we truly can be proud of, and it's how we are able to, with this idea, with this new product, how we can actually harness the strength of the different markets. So looking at different talents with the different capabilities to get them involved in the project. So I mean, I may be jumping here and there, but I think within Asia Pacific, we are looking at looking at how to actually harness the strengths of different markets. We have set up hubs in in Thailand, in Philippines, in India to kind of support certain form of work, for example, data management, finance management, as well as monitoring for desktop monitoring for the trials. So across Asia Pacific, we are trying to connect the markets and to look at what is best suited for the markets to take on.
All right, thank you. So certainly hearing from you, there is a lot of not just growth, but higher value added growth in terms of R&D and innovation.
Yes.
All right, that's very encouraging. How about Bruno? What are you seeing from where you are sitting?
Yeah, look, I moved to Asia from Europe about 9 years ago, and I had a bit the benefit to see things evolve over time, and it is phenomenal. Like if I compare cities like Jakarta, Shanghai, Bangkok 9 years ago versus today, it's such a completely different place. Even Beijing, like if you look at the technology there and how things are evolving, it is phenomenal how much has changed in just a decade. If I think a little bit of the future and how things may evolve, China, for example, produces about 4.5 million engineers and scientists every year. India, 2.5 million engineers and scientists. To put things into perspective, the United States generates about 600,000 engineers and scientists a year. So all of these brand new graduates, 20 to 25-year-olds coming out, well-educated, well-traveled, the future, they will innovate, they will create. I'm very optimistic about Asia in the coming future, just because when I sit around and see these younger generations come out from universities, they're all ambitious, they're all hardworking, they're all creative, and I think there's going to be more and more innovation coming out of Asia in the future. So it'll be a part of the world that's more of a creator and an innovator, as opposed to a part of the world that's receiving technology and IP things from the world.
Okay, all right. Thank you. What about Yan-Tarō? What are you experiencing?
I would clearly say that there is an unparalleled dynamism here, and what has shifted is that it's not, especially in the field of technology, it's not just a market that is following the rest of the world. It's now setting the rules and the trends in some sense. One example that I can take is in the field that I work in semiconductor. Maybe you've seen that in the newspapers, but now the chipsets that are, for example, in your smartphones or in your computers, they are based on the most advanced technologies. 100% of these most advanced technologies chipsets are produced in Taiwan and Korea, and in Asia in general. And China is the number 3. And even Intel, number 1 worldwide in chipsets, they said that they cannot match it. So they have to rely on TSMC, which is a Taiwanese foundry, because the technology itself is too developed and they can't match it. So it's really important. It's really a clear, it became even a matter of sovereignty, because these matters relates to a lot of the dependency on the whole IoT. So there is really a shift in expertise also in some technology markets here. And down the road, for example, in automotive, a lot of things will be driven by China because the market is so huge and they are progressing faster than elsewhere in electric vehicle and further down autonomous driving. So this is also why everybody is focusing here. The challenges will be solved also thanks to the big countries in the area. And this is also why all the geopolitical attention is around here in the South China and Taiwan Straits.
All right. Thank you. For Durgesh, I want perhaps you to start off, on the last question. I know, time is running short, and I know you guys are all busy professionals, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and especially in such short notice, what can you leave us, our students here, one or two things that they definitely must pay attention to when working in Asian cultures? Durgesh.
Sure. Yeah. So the number one thing I would say is that, you be very clear about your goals and objectives. Like if you were to intern or spend some time working for a company in India or to start up in India, what do you plan to be very specific about, what do you plan to achieve through this experience and embrace this experience? So being specific about your goals and objectives is very essential. The second one I would say is that, as we have all spoken, a lot of patience is required while doing this, while setting up your business. And a lot of us have been there and done that. Always feel free to reach out to your network and people like us who are here, and things should go fine. Yeah, so that's all from my side.
Okay. Thank you. Joanne?
Yeah, I would say to be open-minded to the different cultures, to understand how to communicate with another party and person. Due to the different cultural background, the person may perceive you in a very different light from what you think you are portraying. But at the end of the day, it's that alignment that matters, and it's that alignment that will help you to communicate, that will help you to collaborate and achieve success.
All right, thank you. So, can I say making friends with the local becomes extremely important?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bruno?
Yeah, I'd echo what Joanne said before me. The only one or two things I'd add is you cannot paint Asia with a broad brush. Different countries are different cultures. It's not one cohesive culture. It's very diverse. And look at the differences as a source of richness and diversity and something to enjoy, as opposed to something you have to feel uncomfortable with. I think look at the positive. In the end of the day, people are kind, people are nice, and you're all sitting across the same table to achieve the same objective.
All right. Thank you. Yan-Tarō?
Yes, same point. Being very clear that there is no such thing as Asian culture, but there are Asian cultures. And so it's very important to be modest about what you know. If you have done business in one country in Asia, it does not mean that you know how to do business in Asia. And so you have to be careful about adapting what you do, what you say, how you behave to your counterpart. That's the key point.
Yeah, I definitely concur with that. I like to tell people, foreigners, Westerners who come to Singapore, and I will tell them, this is sanitized Asia. But when you take a flight out from Singapore to KL, from KL to Manila to Shanghai, back to Jakarta, then to Seoul, Tokyo, Taipei, and Delhi, you will find that Asia is colorful. Asia is extremely diverse, and I really like how Durgesh started this. Even India itself. In fact, one of the things that I forgot to mention, one of my friends told me, within 100 kilometers in India, you will find a different subculture, a different kind of food. So even India, as we know it as a country, is so huge, so diverse. So with that, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Your precious time, valuable input. And Ian, thank you so much for pulling this off together. over to you again.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I'd like to take this opportunity to actually thank our alumni panelists as well. Durgesh, Yan-Tarō, Joanne, Bruno. So I really like to actually thank all of you for the support they've given to our students, and I understand the students will also have, taken a lot of valuable insights from you guys as well. So thank you very much, and I wish you guys all a great day ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. Before you sign off, let's give our panelists a big hand. Thank you, guys.